Hey, Atlanta, welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins on the Atlanta Sports Unlimited channel. With Tom Pollen, as always, I'm Dave Holcomb. We got another exciting show for you today, covering some Atlanta Falcons news. We missed this last week. Markevius Mingo is making some headlines here in Atlanta. We're going to talk about that situation and who the Falcons should replace him on the roster with. And we'll dive in a little bit of fantasy football as we look ahead to your draft coming up. I don't know, a little bit more than a month from now will be a real popular time for fantasy drafts.
It's getting there. I'm telling you, we're getting close to training camps. So, you can't start planning too early about your fantasy draft.
That's true.
At least I can't, because I'm not as good at it anyway. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Chris Smitherman is not with us today, but Chris Vanell is filling in, producing for us. Thanks a lot, Chris, for replacing Chris this week. And I wanted to recommend Chris Vanell's Ronald Acuna video that he did a few days ago. He covers the Atlanta Braves for the Atlanta Sports Unlimited channel, and did a nice video on Ronald Acuna's injury, which is all the talk in Braves land right now in Atlanta. Didn't get to play in the All-Star game Tuesday. That was disappointing.
It was.
And but the Braves are still going for the division crown, making a few moves this week, picking up Joc Pederson from the Cubs.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to Chris's videos on those acquisitions probably coming up next week.
I don't know what good Joc Pederson is going to do for the Braves, but the Braves made a move.
Right.
But it was to pick up Joc Pederson.
The move they made last night, I think, was even more minor, picking up Stephen Vogt, the veteran catcher.
Yeah. Hey, you never have too many veteran catchers.
That's true. It's true. Is he going to move the needle a lot and help them make a division run? Probably not. But
what the Braves need is for Acuna to get back.
Well, that's not going to happen.
That's just a devastating injury for the team.
Yeah, that is rough.
He's really turning into one of the exciting young players in the major leagues. He's a fun guy to watch play.
Absolutely, yeah. He's one of the best young stars, and any age star in the MLB. He's one of the best right now. So, again, check out Chris's videos on Atlanta Sports Unlimited on YouTube covering the Atlanta Braves. Pivoting back to the Falcons here for a second, I want to start actually today where we ended last week's show, Tom, and that was you making a plug for Mike Keane for Mike Ken for the Hall of Fame. I think probably a majority of our listeners don't listen to the whole show. So the listeners that listened to the end of last week's show heard your pitch. Now the people tuning in closer to noon Eastern time, they'll hear your pitch this week.
Well, the main thing is at the end of August, the senior committee and the contributor committee will be making their announcements for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, their recommendations for each category. And Mike Ken isn't he's not eligible, by the regular vote anymore, by the selection committee. So he has to be pushed into the senior committee. And the main thing I brought up last week is you get so few, really no Hall of Famers, nobody in the Pro Football Hall of Fame who is a Falcon, who played with Atlanta, who's Atlanta's own.
Falcon for life is kind of
right. Falcon for life. Yeah, Brian Friedman. Mike Ken should be a Hall of Famer. Doubt it happens though. Mike, we can do something about that. Brian, we can do something about that. And what you need to do, this is a guy who had a 17-year career at one of the most, at a position that it's difficult to have a career at left tackle, to go that long. And a lot of Hall of Famers who are in considered him one of the best left tackles that they ever faced. I mean, again, I go back to the endorsement that we saw on MikeKenFootball.com, and go to MikeKenFootball.com, and you'll get a lot of his achievements. And the endorsement by Dan Hampton, who, one of my guys, one of my '80s Bears, who talked about how difficult Richard Dent found it, another Hall of Famer, to play Mike Ken when the Bears had to line up against the Falcons. And, and there are a lot of other. Jim Hanifin has an endorsement in there about, coaching him, about his skills. And you really need to, he's somebody who's definitely been overlooked. So what you can do is write to, and they won't take email nominations. You can nominate anybody for the Hall of Fame as long as they've been out of football for 5 years. So, I mean, you can nominate Steve Bartkowski if you want to, even though he's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. But you can nominate anybody, but you have to write. You have to write. You have, but it's not that difficult. You get a nice little bundle of paper, thin little notebook paper.
What is that?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. I know. It costs about $1. You find a couple of envelopes.
Got to get a pen or a pencil.
You have to get a pen or a pencil. Yep, definitely, because you can't just can't put the paper down in front of your computer and type. It's right. Not going to work. But and stamps are easy to find. You can get them at the grocery store. You get them at the post office.
That's really good advice, actually, because I did not know until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago you could get a stamp at a grocery store. Yeah. I'm waiting in these ridiculously long lines at post offices for stamps, and you can just get them when you buy your milk and bread.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to the grocery store to get your beer for the weekend. Hey, pick up a couple of stamps.
Right.
Getting all your Munchables for the barbecue. Grab a couple of stamps, grab some paper, box of envelopes. It's not that hard. We used to do it back in the day when I was a kid. That's kind of how we used to handle things, Dave. We didn't have this fancy internet. So the address is Pro Football Hall of Fame, 2121 George Halas Drive, NW. Okay. Canton, Ohio, 44708. You need to write to them to nominate Mike Ken nominate him as make him a senior committee nominee.
Right.
And
so what do they write on the piece of paper that they find?
Just right. I would like to nominate Mike Ken.
I nominate Mike Ken.
The Hall of Fame as by the senior committee as a senior candidate. I would like to nominate Mike Ken, left tackle Mike Ken, from Pro Football Hall of Fame as a senior committee candidate. That's probably all you need to write. And then don't forget to mail it.
Yeah, got to find a mailbox, or just put it. If you have a mailbox in front of your house, just put it in.
Put it in there. Mail person will take it. Yeah. So again, 2121 George Halas Drive, DR. George Halas Drive. Think of the Bears founder, father of pro football, that kind of thing. George Halas Drive, NW, which I guess stands for Northwest, Canton, Ohio, 44708. And let's do that, because if you can get enough mail in there saying Mike Ken should be in the Hall of Fame, if you don't do it, they're not going to think of it. All right, he's a left tackle. And back in his day, they had no counting stats for left tackles. There was really no way of knowing how good a left tackle was or how good an offensive lineman was. These days with Pro Football Focus and the NFL's next gen stats, we're getting closer to a position where we know we can kind of judge offensive linemen, grade them out. It's still a little difficult for Pro Football Focus because you never know who's watching the game and who's doing the grading. But we're getting to that point where we can point to statistics for an offensive lineman and say this guy deserves it. And I think that's one of the things that we've been missing so long with Mike Ken is his career was in the 70s, and nobody really, as I say, if you don't put this in the forefront of the minds of the senior committee, they're not going to elect him. If you take the effort and do this and start showering the Hall of Fame with nominations for Mike Ken, at the end of August, you might actually see it happen. And as I say, this isn't a guy who spent half his career in Atlanta. This isn't Deion Sanders, who's the Falcon and the Dallas Cowboys. This is your guy. This is a guy you can point to and say, he's us. He's the Atlanta Falcons. He's one of the foundations of this Falcons franchise. Hopefully the kid we drafted out of Michigan is half as good as Jalen Mayfield. If he's half as good as Mike Ken, then yeah, he's going to be pretty damn good. So, but, and I'm going to keep this going all through until the senior committee makes their nomination. But as I said, that's all I can do. It's up to you and all you fans to take the next step. So, do it for a guy who really deserves to have his bust in the hall.
So Ken made 2 All-Pro teams. If Mayfield is half as good, does that mean 1 All-Pro team?
That works for me. I can deal with that.
Yeah.
Ken made a few other Pro Bowls too, so
Yeah, he did. He's looking at it as All-Pro. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're doing pretty well if he's half as good as Mike Ken.
Yeah, I think so too. So thanks very much to you, Tom, for reminding our listeners about Mike Ken, and remember our fans listening to send out those letters as soon as you can to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we'll keep reminding you every Saturday. But get that out as soon as you can. Let's transition to Barkevious Mingo now, a guy that will never advocate for people to nominate for really any award.
No.
Mingo cut from the Atlanta Falcons last Thursday after the team was made aware of his arrest for how do I put this? For exposing himself to an underage.
Well, the problem is the article was the article was graphic, but trying to stay readable. But if you read the article about what Mingo did, if you have any imagination, you know what the next step was. This was not just exposure. And
the thing that I can say while remaining PG, what he did is he tried to pull a 13-year-old's pants down, and
did pull a 13-year-old's pants down.
Did right? We
can't sugarcoat it too much because it's serious what he did.
Yeah, no, yeah. Of course. So we can debate whether or not the Falcons were too quick to release him. Some people have been critical of that, but I think the fact of the matter,
I stand with the Falcons on that.
Oh, I do too. Yeah, I do too. So, we won't. One of us could play devil's advocate, but
no. I'm not standing here. I'll play devil's advocate for a lot of things, but that's not one of them. He is good as gone. Unfortunately, this incident didn't get reported until last January. The police investigation didn't take place until last January because he was a Chicago Bears player last year.
Right.
And I was wondering why, if this accusation was sitting out there, how did he end up on the Bears and how did he play a full season for the Bears? But apparently this came out after the season. Might be one of the reasons why the Bears didn't make a bid to land him and re-sign him for the team.
Did he play all that well for the Bears anyway, though?
He played fairly well in spots. He was kind of like a platoon. He'd go in on third downs. He actually did make some plays. He was noticeable on the field. So, I mean, he's not the first round draft pick that everybody thought he was good.
I mean,
when they drafted him in the first round.
He not only was he a first round pick, he was 6th overall. I mean,
yes,
top
exactly.
10, almost top 5. And I mean, I'm sure there are others, but he is one of the biggest busts of the last decade.
Oh, absolutely.
Top 10 picks not working out. And if we're excluding quarterbacks, quarterbacks always have the big limelight on them and they're picked first, second, whatever. And they don't all work out. But
that's a good idea for an article. Non-quarterback busts.
Non-quarterback busts, draft busts. Recently, the last he's beyond 5 years now. Last 10 years, we'll have to go to include Mingo. But in the last 10 years, he's got to be one of the top 5 busts.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I 6th overall by Cleveland. Boy, Cleveland thought they were getting somebody who was going to anchor their line for a long time. And he did nothing with them, and he's done nothing for anybody since then.
Well, he had 5 sacks as a rookie, starting in 3 games. And you thought, okay, yeah, he's going to be the star that he's supposed to be. He's developing. He's going to see more snaps in his second and third years. And he did see more snaps in those seasons, and he had fewer sacks. He had 2 sacks starting 11 games in his second season. And really, that's 7 sacks in 2 years. He's had 5.5 sacks since then. So since his rookie year of 5 sacks, he's had 7.5 sacks in the last, I think, 6 seasons.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 2.5 of those were last year for the Bears. That's the thing. I mean, he actually, as I say, he actually played decent for the Bears last year, but the Bears didn't offer him another contract to come back. And this might be one of the reasons why, because maybe the Bears got caught wind of this investigation that was going on with Mingo. But I praise the Falcons for doing what needed to be done and dumping him and getting him, out of the organization. You don't need that in the organization.
I agree. And if Mingo was actually playing like a first round pick or a much better player, it would be interesting to see what the Falcons would do. I'm not saying they only cut him because he wasn't a great player. I guess the point I'm making is it's easier to say, yeah, I'm cleaning house of this guy because he's supposed to be a role player.
That made it easy, yes.
Yeah.
That definitely made it easier. But it's something that they probably would have waited longer and said something about the investigation. We got to see how things play out.
Right.
But,
right.
Even if he was expected to contribute next year, I still think the Falcons did the right thing. There's no room for that. No room for that at all.
No, yeah, I agree. They did do the right thing and moving on from him. And I guess I'll keep this brief. I don't want to get into a big debate about it because we both agree. But anybody who says, well, we should let him have due process in the court of law, yes, he should have his due process. Right. He should have his day in court. But the Falcons are a private organization, and a private organization can do really whatever they want.
You got it.
So you can criticize the Falcons. That's your right as an American. You have free speech. You can criticize the Falcons. I'll exercise my free speech and say, I agree with what the Falcons did in releasing.
Yeah.
So they have an open roster spot, and I really would like to see the Falcons target Justin Houston. I know there are a
Yeah.
few other linebackers, edge rushers that they could target. I think Justin Houston, technically a defensive end now. He played for the Colts the last couple of years. But I think he's a no-brainer ad. I know that Falcons don't have a lot of salary cap space, but it's July, and Houston doesn't have a job. He shouldn't cost very much. They could get him on a one-year deal. Houston was still very productive with Indianapolis the last 2 years. I mean,
yes.
Do you agree that this is a no-brainer? I mean, should they even look at anybody else?
Well, depending on the price, you never know what he's going to ask. But if you can get him at a good price, yeah, definitely. It's definitely a no-brainer. You bring him in. Because basically right now, there just isn't anybody on the corner. I mean, for the Falcons, there's nobody that they can count on. At least Houston would give them, I think, would give them some production. But I was looking through the Falcons roster as it stands earlier today, and I'm really worried about the pass rush on this team. Because I just don't know where it's going to come from.
I've been clamoring about they need to upgrade the pass rush for years. They've neglected it for years. The last time they drafted a pass rusher in the first round was Takk McKinley after they were in the Super Bowl, 2017. And they haven't really brought in anything in, free agency wise. I mean, they brought in Dante Fowler, but they counted on Dan Quinn fixing Vic Beasley and Takk McKinley. That didn't work out. And then they bring in Dante Fowler, and, he's not as good not playing with Aaron Donald, sorry. Right. And he played in the Ndamukong Suh.
And we're going to see if the Aaron Donald factor also works with Leonard Floyd. Because Floyd had a career year last year after busting for the Bears.
True.
And now we're going to see whether Leonard Floyd can do what Dante Fowler did, or fall as far as maybe he can outplay Fowler. I don't know, but I'm just saying maybe he busts because he doesn't have Fowler next to him. I mean, not Fowler, Donald next to him.
Right, yeah. But yeah, I think Houston. I really think he would be. I think he'd be better than Mingo. I think he'd be better than just about anybody that is on the Falcons roster, other than Grady Jarrett at rushing the passer. And he
would be.
Jarrett rushes from the inside, and Houston's an outside guy, so it would be a great pairing to do that, to add Houston to this roster. I was looking at his snaps last year. He played, I think was about 58% of the snaps for the Indianapolis Colts, which doesn't scream, a lot of snaps, and you're concerned about the durability, the stamina of a 32-year-old, player. Right. But the Falcons, the only pass rusher that played more than that percentage of snaps for them last year was Grady Jarrett. Yeah. So, Houston comes on. He takes some snaps from Steven Means. He takes some snaps from Dante Fowler. Maybe they're more effective because they're fresher, or maybe Houston is the fresh guy coming in on third down because Means and Fowler are playing on the first couple of downs. So I really would like the idea of targeting Houston.
So do I. 8 sacks last season. Can we afford him with 7.6 in cap? That's the problem, Gremlin. We don't know. It depends on what he's asking. I would imagine the price comes down as we start moving through training camp. As he's starting to really look for a roster spot, his price probably comes down. But again, Dave made the point. He's 32 years old. At a certain point, he's just not going to make that big money anymore. 7.6 in cap should be enough to bring him in. The main problem is you still have to save some cap for during the season for injuries. You've got to give yourself a little bit of space in there to sign players to replace. Because you're going to have your share of injuries. That's just the way it's going to happen.
Right.
So, don't just think, that they're going to dump the entire 7.6 on him. But if you can get him for 5, the guy, he had 8 sacks last year, 8 tackles for loss, 12 quarterback hits. I'm looking at Pro Football Reference. That's pretty damn good production for a guy who's still on the market.
Yeah, I know.
He's still on the market. Nobody's picked him up yet.
Yeah.
So I'm saying the longer he stays on the market, you're going to get him at a pretty good price. So don't give up on the thought of getting Justin Houston.
He made, or I should say, he counted as a $9 million cap hit last year, and that kind of surprised me. It was that high. Obviously, the Falcons can't go that high.
No.
But yeah, he was very productive last year.
I would say 5 at most.
And I guess that could be why he's still a free agent, because we see the production. So we're assuming, unless something's happened in the offseason where he's injured or he's put on weight or something, then it's not. I don't think it's his play is the reason why he's still a free agent.
It could be. It's probably what he's still at.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's tough for a guy on the other side of his career to. 2 years ago, he had 11 sacks.
Yeah.
18 quarterback hits. I mean, he was a monster. So, sometimes it's tough for guys to see themselves maybe not as the hot commodity anymore. And, he's just not that. The fact that no team has jumped yet. And, again, you got the salary cap problem that have plagued teams all year.
That's true.
That is going to go away after 2021, but you're still dealing with next season, and he's got to realize that the money is not out there right now that he may feel he deserves.
When we said that back in February, March, that there would be veteran players that would be on the street because of the salary cap issue. And Houston is an example of that. There's a few other linebackers, edge rushers that the Falcons could target. Our favorite is definitely Justin Houston.
Oh yeah, exactly. Vic Beasley's still out there.
Yeah, I don't think we want to see him back here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I was just looking at the free agent list. I'm a little surprised to see Vic Beasley is still on there, but Justin Houston's definitely the best, and he's going to generate some pass rush that you're just not going to get. This is a team that needs to pressure the quarterback somehow, and you can't blitz all the time. You can disguise defenses. You can hide blitzes. You can hide a cornerback blitz, safety blitz, but eventually you're going to get burned. Ideally, you want to get that rush with the front four and have that be it, or at least be able to get a consistent rush with the front four, then embellish it with a blitz, where you can start really throwing an offense off balance. I think they definitely need Houston, but we'll see as time goes on. But I'm looking at the list. I don't see a lot of guys. I mean, Everson Griffin, but he's 34 years old now.
I have a list here, and I don't think it's updated. Is Melvin Ingram still available?
Melvin Ingram. Does not look like it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to get a different list. This list is not up to date.
Yeah. But, I see, I know Everson Griffin is a good player, but he's at a point where his production is going to start dropping. You're not going to be – and he has nobody on the other side to help him out. He's going to take all the double teams, and there's nobody to take advantage of that. So, Justin Houston is their best option. if they can get him at around $5 million. So, and I think it's going to take another 2-3 weeks before that situation plays itself out.
Kind of wait for training camp and let the price drop for him a little bit more. He'll realize, oh, football is actually starting. I don't have a job.
Yes,
kind of thing.
That's it. Exactly. Once camp starts, everybody on the outside looking in is ready to start making some deals. They want to get on the field.
Melvin Ingram still is available.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a name, and Bruce Irvin, I believe, is another name that I would throw in there as a
yeah. I'm not as high on him, and I think the Falcons can definitely do better than Bruce Irvin. I'm not a big. I think he's definitely past his prime, and I don't think he's going to add much to the Falcons at defensive end.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely say, I prefer Houston over him. Irvin is a veteran presence that I think would help, but I would definitely prefer Justin Houston for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but we'll see what happens. And I think that's where they have to spend that roster spot. I think they're strong enough. They're going into camp deep enough at every other position where I think the defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it these days. Right. Everybody wants to call it something different.
Yeah.
Wish somebody would settle on a term that they want to use. But
edge rusher is the term now.
Yeah, edge. But then you also see a guy you consider an edge, and they're calling him an outside linebacker. And yeah,
it depends on the scheme,
I guess. But Irvin didn't do anything last year for the Seahawks, and I don't think. I think he's definitely past it. I don't think he's somebody that's going to give the Falcons any appreciable help, and they do need help at that position.
Yes, they do. Yeah, I think they need a lot of help. I don't think Justin Houston by himself is going to fix it, but he would help.
No, he's not going to fix it, but you hope you get a better year out of Dante Fowler too.
Right. Yeah.
That's the other part is maybe Dean Pease finds another year with Dante Fowler that they didn't find last year. And that's the other wild card is how Dean Pease handles, how does he handle this defense? So, I can't wait to see what kind of adjustments they make with him as the defensive coordinator. Because maybe you can find something else, something out of Dante Fowler. Maybe last year was an aberration. You never know. It's hard to say. Maybe he thought he was going to live off his reputation. I don't know. You never know.
That last year was an aberration for Dante Fowler?
Yeah, for Fowler, yeah. Maybe last year was an aberration. And maybe you see him returning a little bit more to form this year. You don't know. He had one down year. You got to.
Yeah, but he only had one good year, too. He's played 4 seasons, right? 5 seasons.
Well, but he did show, he showed life. Maybe he could show life again. Maybe.
You're being super positive.
I'm being super positive. I'm being a meatball fan here. All you meatball fans, let's all say it. Dante Fowler, Defensive Player of the Year. See how that rolled off the tongue?
Okay. Yeah, so he had, what was it? He had 11.5 sacks in 2019. That was his breakout season. And in 3 years with the Jaguars before that, he had 14 sacks.
Yeah.
And then 2020, he goes back to averaging 3 sacks. He had 3 sacks. That's basically what he averaged with the Jaguars. So
Yeah, January.
I get what you're saying, that you're trying to be positive. Oh, maybe he'll be returned to form. But the fact is, Fowler, that is who Fowler is.
I'm just trying to say that at some point, you got to either hope Fowler does it or nobody's going to be doing it. What do you think you're going to get out of Steve Means?
About what you're getting out of Fowler.
Well, that's not good enough.
I agree with you. I agree. That's why they need to get Justin Houston and
I don't care.
a pass rusher next year.
I don't care how good your secondary is. Okay, you can have an all-pro secondary at each position. If you don't get any pass rush, they're going to get beat. And it's just the way it goes. If you can't put footsteps in the quarterback's ear, if you can't make them uncomfortable in the pocket, you're going to get torn apart. You're going to make Mitch Trubisky look like Pat Mahomes if you can't get any rush. So, and that's stretching it, I know,
But your point is well taken. I mean, at times the Falcons' defense has made below average quarterbacks look really good, and good quarterbacks look like Hall of Famers. The last year or 2 years under, I'm thinking about the Dan Quinn era.
Right.
Under Dan Quinn, it maybe played a little bit better towards the end of last year. But
now, remember something also, and this is something nobody seems, and I wrote about it once. That Seattle defense that everybody talked about, that was just killer, that was one of the best in the league, that came at you from all directions.
Yeah.
That was not built by Dan Quinn. That was built by Gus Bradley. Dan Quinn inherited that defense after they had already been the number one defense in the NFL. So he was just a caretaker of that defense. And we saw a little bit of what Dan Quinn couldn't build it when he came to Atlanta. But Gus Bradley was the architect of that defense in Seattle, not Dan Quinn.
Point well taken. And I think Seattle also, they had Hall of Fame players all over the place.
Yeah.
They had talented guys at all three levels. And it probably, no matter who was the defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley or Dan Quinn, it wasn't really about the scheme, it was the players. And in Atlanta, they don't have the players right now.
Well, you're going to find out whether it was the scheme of the players as Dean Pease comes in and sees what he can do with basically the same group. There's not much difference. He had it in the draft, but you're not. So, we're going to get a good look at whether it was the Dan Quinn regime that was the problem, or whether this is just a terrible defensive roster. It might be a little bit of both.
I think it's, probably a little bit of both. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you that, this spot needs to go to a pass rusher, and there is no pass rusher that they can get and fix everything, but a pass rusher like Justin Houston would help. And then, of course, please, Atlanta Falcons, draft a pass rusher in April. Yeah. You have not done that the last 2-3 years when you really needed to.
He made Marcus Mariota look like Joe Davis.
Right. That's true. Back in 2019, that was the last game Mariota played the full game? I forgot about that. Yeah. But I do remember that the Falcons played the Titans early in that season, and I think A.J. Brown had 2 touchdowns, 2 long touchdowns.
Yeah, so, you just – and you can't stop that if you're just going to let Ryan Tannehill sit back there all day and look over his – you can't stop it if you don't have defensive pass rush. Yeah, that's the foundation of everything on defense is that line. that front seven. And I mean, a couple of years ago when we were writing, we both were pushing for Brian Burns and Montez Sweat as possibilities for the Falcons. Both were available for the Falcons.
Yeah.
And
Sweat had the injury issue at the time. Or was it an injury issue, or was it a heart condition? He had something.
He had the heart condition.
Heart condition.
Yeah, which they kind of decided wasn't really a serious thing.
It doesn't be now.
There was a bit of a heart defect that they were looking at. But I mean, they both made my, most overlooked players for 2020.
Yeah.
They both made that list, and I don't think they're going to be overlooked much longer. And you would like to see what Brian Burns or Montez Sweat could do with the Falcons. Really disappointed. That's probably the most disappointed I've been since following the Falcons, is that Lindstrom, okay, I could see they were weak in the offensive line.
I was going to say I wanted the pass rusher there, but Lindstrom I think is going to be a good player, a really good player. The mistake was trading back into the first round for another lineman.
And then taking McGarry.
Yeah.
No, they needed the pass rusher there, at that spot. That's why you trade back into the round. And that was it. That was the huge mistake Dimitroff made.
They could have probably waited and still got McGarry 15 picks later.
Yes, exactly. Right. They could have. Definitely. Because nobody had him that high on their boards.
Right.
And that's a tough thing. And I know the talk all that summer was, we got to protect Matt Ryan. We got to protect Matt Ryan. But you also got to rush the quarterback. And I know at that time they attacked McKinley, they had Vic Beasley, and they thought that they were going to get something more out of them.
Yeah.
But, you knew one of them was going to fail. I never – when Vic Beasley refused to come in and work with Dan Quinn, wanted to work solo, on his own, wouldn't come in and coach the A's. Mm-hmm. That's when I knew Vic Beasley wasn't going to make it. He was going to – and that's where I knew it was going to be a bad thing that the Falcons hadn't made the move for Burns or Sweat, or that they really passed up an opportunity, because and even if Beasley and McKinley had started working out better, you can't have too many edge rushers.
All right.
You make it work. You show a little imagination. You stretch your scheme a little bit. You don't coach by trying to get guys to fit into your scheme. And, well, I can't use a third pass rusher. What am I going to do with him? You find ways to get them all on the field at once. But and McKinley and Beasley both ended up being busts. So, and the Falcons really lost because they didn't have the guy.
I don't think it helped either while we're diagnosing like the 2019 Falcons failure or 2020 Falcons failures here for a few minutes. It did not help that they were counting on injured players who were Pro Bowlers, all-pro like talent that had serious injuries, Achilles tears, ACL tears, and they were counting on them coming back and being the same that they were before. And Deion Jones, maybe not as serious of an injury. I'm not 100% sure what he injured in 2019. He did miss, I think, 10 games.
Yeah.
He's come back and been the same player.
Well, it was Freeman at running back, counting on Freeman to come back as the same running back that he was.
That too.
That was the problem.
Well, I'm just talking about the defense. Ricardo Allen and
Ricardo Allen, right.
And Neal.
Keanu Neal, yeah.
Neal, yeah.
Right.
And they're not pass rushers. I know we're talking about pass rushers right now, but I mean, you're saying you can't count on getting the quarterback just playing good coverage. I agree with you, but if the coverage was a little bit better, if Neal and Allen have lost a step, then it's just that much easier for the pass rush not to get to the quarterback, which appeared to be an issue as well. That they weren't getting help on the back end either.
No, they weren't. So it became a rough thing. And, part of that, as I said, I blame Dimitrov for not evaluating his roster better and not being more realistic about what he was looking at. And the Falcons are paying for it now because they have to build it.
Yeah. This is just a long way of saying, please sign Justin Houston.
Yeah. Get somebody in there who at least has some kind of track record at rushing the quarterback. Yeah. Somebody who knows his way around a backfield. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So I said we would talk a little bit about fantasy drafts. We're going to get really into high gear in fantasy in the next few weeks. But we talked quarterbacks last week. How about we talk about some running backs here for the last 10 minutes or so, Tom?
That works. Yeah, definitely.
So we talked about tiering last week, and I think that's a topic maybe we could spend a whole show on. But I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Give me your three, or give me your top tiered running backs. Do you have like 3 or 4 guys that you're grouping at the top there, and then a secondary group? How are you viewing the running backs going into the 2021 season? The top of the draft. We'll get into sleepers later. I'm talking, the elite running backs.
I'm looking at Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, and Christian McCaffrey. My problem is I had Henry last year, and he's just a monster. But the guy has carried the ball 700 times over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I love him as a player, but you can't take that kind of battering at running back and keep your and keep your edge, keep working, keep pushing out those numbers. Right now, I would say my top running back is, I don't know, can McCaffrey stay healthy? Because he does it all. He catches passes, he runs. His handicap is he's got Sam Darnold throwing to him. So
that's a pretty big handicap, but it could help too. He's going to be running the ball a lot, assuming that they're still in games, I guess.
I think they're going to have to run the ball a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think they have much choice. They're going to war with Sam Darnold. I just can't believe it. Oh, my God.
We have an answer to my question from Brian. He has CMC, Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, and Dalvin Cook in his top tier of.
Jonathan Taylor's a good one. Yes. Yeah. I like that Jonathan Taylor one. So definitely, and I think Taylor might still be a guy who gets overlooked a little bit. He really hasn't joined Dalvin Cook and Kamara as one of the top names. He's kind of been among those second-tier names, but he plays like a top name. Jonathan Taylor is a heck of a back. He's going to be, you're going to see him, getting Pro Bowl honors, All-Pro, I think, once or twice. Definitely a tough running back.
He had an incredible end of the season, too. I'm looking up his stats here. He did miss a game being on the COVID list after Thanksgiving, but in the last 6 games that he played, he averaged 6.2 yards per carry. Just an incredible run. And he had a slow start, admittedly. He really did. But with that finish to the season, he ended up averaging 5 yards per carry in the rookie season.
Yeah, he's going to be incredible. He's just tough to bring down. I love him as a running back. So, yeah, that's the one name I was forgetting. Thanks a lot for that one.
How are you viewing we have another comment here from Pantera. I like Cook if he can stay healthy. Najee Harris and Pitt will be beast mode. That's what I like to hear. I love to see Najee Harris be beast mode. The concern I have with Harris is there's a lot of hype around him, and will he be overdrafted? And I hate to say it as a Steelers fan, but that offensive line is something to watch too. Steelers are going to have 5 new starters on their offensive line, and I've talked about it before. They were great at pass blocking, but that was partially because Roethlisberger threw the ball in like 1.8 seconds. And they weren't great at run blocking. So is this actually an upgrade? Getting 5 new starters, does that actually make the line better, or is it somehow going to be worse? They were 32nd in yards per carry and rushing yards per game. With Harris, hopefully it's better for the Steelers. I just wouldn't overdraft him. Be careful of that.
Yeah, I would say so too. Right. You don't know what you're going to get out of him left yet. Normally it takes an offensive line a few games to actually come together. And you have 5 new linemen. This is going to take a bit for them to get used to each other, get used to the schemes. Don't underestimate the effect that's going to have on what Najee Harris can do. And I like Harris I love him as a running back. He is. I think Pittsburgh made a heck of a draft pick there, but you do need the horses in front of you to really take your game to the next level in the NFL.
At least early on, if you're starting Harris, you're counting on him getting 20, 25 carries because he's going to average like 3 to 3.5 yards per carry. So you need him to get that volume, which he might get. There's not really any other running back that's going to be taking carries from him in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And you're counting on him scoring as well and getting into the end zone. He's not going to be an efficient guy like Taylor was as a rookie, averaging 5 yards per carry over the course of his rookie season.
No, not going to happen. Baltimore had a better offensive line. Baltimore. Oh my God, am I showing my age? Indianapolis had a better offensive line.
Right. We get another comment from Brian. He likes Cam Akers as well. That's a guy to watch. I think he would slot into my second tier of running backs. It's somebody I wanted to ask you about, and I can ask our listeners as well, how you're viewing this guy coming off of a major injury, but was a superstar before the injury, Saquon Barkley. Where do you slot him in? He's complicated because he gets so many touches being on the Giants' offense, but he doesn't get much help on that offense, doesn't get a lot of opportunity to do a lot with the volume that he gets.
No, he doesn't, because they don't respect Jones at quarterback.
Right.
So you end up with more guys in the box than you got more guys in the box than you can block. So and that's one of the problems Barkley has, is trying to find running room. I think he's shown he can be an effective runner. He can be a very good runner, elusive runner, but you got to give him that a little bit of space to work with, and I don't think he gets that in New York.
He did average. Brian says Barkley's still first-round pick.
Yes,
I think so too. Yeah, I guess it depends on the size of your league. He's a first-round pick, but I wouldn't. Probably not top 5. I guess I'll say not a top 5 pick. He did average. This was 3 years ago, but he averaged 5 yards per carry as a rookie. So he was doing more with that volume than I suggested at first. He had 91 catches as a rookie as well. I mean, they're just feeding him the ball over and over again.
But they don't have anybody else.
Yeah.
And as I say, Daniel Jones, they're going to keep riding him at quarterback, and I don't see him taking them anywhere. If you could tell, I'm not a big Daniel Jones fan.
I'm not either. I'm definitely not either.
After a certain amount of time, what you see on the field is it. That they're not getting better. You're seeing what he has. We've already seen what he has. There's nothing left to try and find out with this guy. So, Saquon Barkley gets the ball. he's another guy I think might get run down before his time. Kind of like Derrick Henry, where he gets the ball so much that, at some point, you lose a little bit of that effectiveness, lose a little bit of that strength, that cutting ability.
So I guess with Barkley, your concerns are more of the offense than coming back from the major injury.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Barkley can come back from the injury. He's still young.
Yeah.
He's still, he's still young enough to come back from that injury. And he was running very well before the injury. But my concern is with the New York Giants offense. And I got to see more from their offensive line. I have to see more. I have to see Daniel Jones do more through the air to, get some guys out of the box, move those safeties back a little bit and give Barkley a little bit more room.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Well, we've mentioned about 7-8 running backs if you want to count Harris. I know Harris isn't in my top 10 anyway. So we've mentioned 7 guys that I think are in the top 10, interchangeable. We can debate where to rank these guys. So I want to throw out 3 more names to complete my top 10. So the other 3 guys that I would have in the top 10, Nick Chubb, Ezekiel Elliott, and Aaron Jones, which, Jones, it's going to depend on if he's playing with Rodgers or not, how productive he is, but maybe he'll have more carries, more opportunity if Aaron Rodgers isn't playing.
Yeah, Jones is definitely – this guy you never think of as one of the top backs in the league, but he had a hell of a season last year. I know because I had Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and Aaron Jones as my running backs.
You won your league, right?
No, I finished second.
Oh.
Because Russell Wilson had a terrible second half of the season. So I was never able to get good quarterback play in the second half of the season. But, and I had Stephon Diggs at receiver. So I was getting great play all over the field except for my quarterback.
All right. Well, that's why you wait on your quarterback this year.
That's it.
You maybe even get another wide receiver that really can help you at wide receiver 2. And then, you have a lesser name than Russell Wilson at quarterback, but somebody who's actually producing more maybe.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, Russell Wilson looked like an MVP at cornerback for a while. I mean, I was trouncing my competition, in the first half of the season. By the end of Sunday, I didn't even have to worry about the rest of the games. I was way out ahead. I was coasting. I could have put Scrubs in there and still won. It still won. So good. But, the second half, it was rough because I just wasn't getting the games out of guys I needed. So.
And Brian brings up no Jamal Williams this year in Green Bay. They do, though, have A.J. Dillon. So that is something to watch. Dillon was playing more in December, partially, I think, to rest Aaron Jones. But Dillon is one of those rookie running backs from last year to watch. We mentioned Jonathan Taylor. We talked about J.K. Dobbins last week. And, A.J. Dillon is in that class as well. Probably not as high ranked right now, but has the potential to be just as effective.
Tell you the truth, I wasn't as impressed with Jamal Williams last year. I thought the Packers were a lot better when they had Aaron Rodgers in the game. So I don't think they're going to miss Jamal Williams as much as some. Just my opinion.
No, yeah, I agree because they still have the two running backs. I mean, maybe Dillon isn't the pass catcher that Williams was. I'd have to double check that, but I don't think the Packers are going to be missing much, and Jones will benefit only having one other guy getting carries instead of 2, because Dillon did get some carries last year, not a lot, but some.
Let's see. I was trying to look him up here real quick. It's tough to keep all these guys straight in your head. because my head only has finite capacity anymore. Sometimes it's a little bit tougher. But yeah, Williams, 500 yards, caught 31 passes. He caught 31 out of 35 targets. So it was effective in the pass game. But, I agree with you. A.J. Dillon, I think, is just as effective as a running back. Let's see. Who else do we get? But Aaron Jones caught 47 passes last year, scored 11 rushing and receiving touchdowns. So, he performs when he's out there. He's a clutch player for Green Bay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why we're not doing our rankings right now. You said at the top of the show, it's never too early to start preparing. Absolutely, that's true. But keep in mind, things are still moving. There's still the question of whether or not Aaron Rodgers plays for the Packers this year, and that's greatly going to impact whether or not Jones
I can't believe that's still going on.
I know. That will greatly impact whether or not Jones is a top 10 running back or not in fantasy. But I got him there right now, and that's going to be our show. We're past the hour mark, Tom.
I'm telling you, what fast today. Jeez. I feel like we just started. Go another hour. No. Don't want to bore everybody who's listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out the rest of the Atlanta Sports Unlimited YouTube channel and find us on Facebook. Give us a like there. Join the conversation. You can also find us on Twitter at TJ Pollen, at DM Holcomb. Chris Vannell, thanks so much for producing today. We'll be back next week at noon Eastern time on Saturday.